The United States is a huge country with a lot of landscape and 330 million people. And while it's a multicultural nation, those millions of people share a lot of common cultural traits. When you live abroad, you somehow notice those cultural traits of your home country a lot more than you ever would otherwise. It's kind of like an H&M dressing room. Suddenly you see yourself from every particular angle, and they're not all always that pretty. We talk about these things on our channel a lot. It actually helps us process what we observe about our own culture while we've been living abroad in Denmark, and it helps us to adjust to our new life here. One of our most viewed videos is called 9 Reasons the Danes Don't Like You. In it, we talk about common cultural clashes that occur between Americans and Danes. Maybe you've seen it. It actually just crossed over 200,000 views since we published it not even a year ago. So if you did watch it, thank you. We really appreciate it. And to celebrate, Mike and I decided to give this video one more watch and kind of see if we still agree with the things that we talked about ourselves just over a year ago. There was one spark of inspiration that hit me in particular, and that was around one of the things that I mentioned in the video and the point I made about the idea of Danes not liking you when you ask this simple 3-worded question of, how are you? I've been thinking about this a lot since we first published this video just about a year ago, and I've come across some new perspectives about this and where this culture clash might actually come from and how it's not actually a bad thing. In fact, it tells you a lot about both Danes, Americans, and their respective cultures. So today I want to talk to you about that question. Okay, so how did a simple question like, how are you, become so confusing to the Danes? I realized in the last year, after talking to a lot of my Danish friends and other non-American friends, that the question itself isn't the confusing part, but asking the question to begin with is what confuses them. What I hear from a lot of Danes is, why would you bother asking that question if you don't really want to know the answer? I even touched on that idea in the video, and we'll show that clip right here. So the only way that a Dane is truly going to answer this question is with, well, a truthful answer. So you're gonna hear things back like, well, my knee hurts today, or, oh, I got in a fight with my wife last night. And that's not necessarily what you wanna get into when you're greeting someone. Now, I know Americans simply want an answer like, I'm fine, how about you? So to a Dane, that may come off as a little bit fake or superficial, because you're asking a question that you really don't want an answer to. That's kind of rude if you think about it. Now, I heard this criticism, but I didn't really stop to think of the cultural nuances that cause this social stalemate. I would always try to explain to my Danish friends, it's just a turn of phrase. You can answer it however you feel comfortable. It may change moment to moment and depend on your relationship with that person, but don't make it a big deal. And I think some of my Danish friends just wanted to be stubborn. Others definitely understood it, but some didn't want to take these answers. They know what a greeting is, and they're hardly unique to the American English that I speak, but this one really just irks the soul of a lot of Danes. They can understand why you would open an encounter with anybody by posing such a potentially deep question, and not every situation is going to give you the time to sit down or stand still and have a long, meaningful conversation about how somebody is really doing. So let's get to the answer. So my answer, after quite a bit of reflection, is that the American "how are you" is essentially a level-setting question. It's just a way of making sure that everything's going fine before you engage with somebody. It kind of gives a little bit of social space for the other person as well. It's like a little bit of breathing room to just let them know that they can say hi, or they can say more if they like. And this applies equally to your colleague that you see first thing in the morning, or maybe a neighbor that you pass while you're picking up the mail. It's just an opportunity for more details, but it's not a probing interview. You kind of leave the nature of how they respond up to the person to whom you're asking the question. I actually think this is something that most Danes would appreciate if they just understood it a little bit better. And that's kind of because in Danish culture, and I know this is a broad statement and it doesn't apply to every person or every region of Denmark, but people in Denmark tend to be a bit more private. So it's especially nice to have that option. And this is definitely true in a larger city like Copenhagen, but for some reason, maybe it's the busyness of their lives or kind of the humble nature of Danes, most people just think that their colleague or their neighbor wouldn't be that interested in them outside of their transactional relationship, their work responsibilities, or picking up the mail. And that isn't to say that people aren't friendly with their colleagues or with their neighbors, but they don't expect to be true friends with them outside of work or the hallway. They enjoy that mutually understood boundary, and to be honest, a question like, how are you, lets you lay out that boundary very clearly, because you can reply with something as simple as, I'm good, and you? And that's just a way of saying, I'm fine today, and I wish you well, without really engaging for more. But you can. Now, some people that I've talked to about this question, they couldn't really get past the idea that some American might answer with more detail. You know, some Danish friends have even joked that they just want to tell the cashier at Walmart, I'm miserable and I was up all night crying over my sick pet turtle who won't eat anymore. Now, look, that would be a lot. It would be awkward for anybody to get that kind of reply. But this is where Americans and Danes kind of differ a bit. My Danish friends have told me that they look at this scenario as somebody being told something that they don't really care about, and that it's shallow, that an American generally wouldn't care, but they would. Trust me, Americans are a little more used to depending on their neighbors and other members of their community as opposed to the state. Now, that's different than Denmark and not what this video is about, but just realize Americans are more used to checking in on each other, especially because of our history. America was a rural agrarian society for most of its history, so we got used to asking, how are you today, before we initiated a transaction, and it just kind of grew into our way of speaking to one another. So yeah, for 5 years now, Danes have told me that how are you is a superficial question, but I beg to differ. Superficial is in the eye of the beholder. What I mean is that in this case, American culture, we're less private, and even if other cultures can't quite understand why, it's not because we're superficial. We really would care if somebody told us about their pet turtle. Even if it seemed odd or out of place at the time, we would stop in our tracks and ask more questions before we moved on to the transactional part of the engagement. So in fact, if you get asked this at a store, it's usually because it's the final point of contact with somebody at the store and you. They want to make sure that you found everything you needed at Walmart that day, and maybe you did miss the turtle food and the cashier could have helped you out. Sorry, the turtle example needs to go, but you know, all in all, I just want to push back a little bit on the things that I said a year ago, and I hope that you listened with an open mind and you know, just kind of understand a bit more what how are you means. It really is a sign of caring when an American says that. It may seem out of place, but if you're not well and you do feel comfortable sharing, take the opportunity to answer the question as more than just a greeting and vent to your American friends or colleagues. Even the stranger at the store, they're really not going to care. Just let it out. You know, I care, Denmark. Tell me your troubles. Even if we're just crossing paths and I say, how are you? Let me know. Now, before you do that though, check out the original video right here. This is one that I was talking about throughout, and let us know what you think of that video and this one in the comments below. We really want to know what your thoughts are on how are you and what you think. So thank you for watching, and thank you for having an open mind and hopefully understanding our weird American culture and the way that we think and tick a little bit differently than you, and that this video helped you out with that. Bye guys.